We're going to talk about getting this hand-drawn dimensioned piece of work going. So your first step to do this assignment is to choose something from your house that you want to draw and dimension. In this first video, I'm going to focus on how to make a thumbnail drawing of an object. Then I'll post a second video on dimensioning that object. So let's just start by thinking about what we want to draw today. I picked up a couple things around my house. I picked up this stapler. Let me do this. Let me make this a little bit bigger. Ooh, let me just show you the stapler here, right? That makes more sense. Okay, so this is a possible object that I can draw. I want to stop and think about, is this going to be too complex for me? Do I feel like I can draw this in such a way that we can kind of think about a couple of the sides? So this is I'm going to say I could do this, but this is trickier. This is kind of trickier. So I'm going to put this in the trickier area. I found a tiny thing of toothpaste. I like this object. It's not too hard. It's got kind of a round piece, which might be harder for me to draw. It kind of gets skinny on one end and thick here. So there's a lot of different things that I could consider dimensioning. So this is also kind of tricky, but possible. I got this out of the kitchen. This is like a blender tool, and I think about drawing this and my head hurts. Like to try to think about getting this at an angle that I can see all the sides and think about dimensioning these interior and exterior pieces and all these details at the end. I'm holding this in my hand thinking, this is kind of hard. I don't know if I want to draw this or not. This assignment is really going to be dependent on you picking an object that matches what you feel comfortable doing. All right, so I'm going to kind of set this like I'm layering them and like easy to hard for me. I was in the kitchen and I got this butter knife and I'm like, oh, well, that's a lot easier than that whisk tool. Like, I feel like I could make this shape. I mean, if I were desperate, I could almost trace that shape, which is not really what I want you to do, but is a possibility. There's a possibility for getting started. So this butter knife looks real easy. I'm going to put that down here on the easy end. And then my last thing that I found is this remote control, my little Roku remote. And I like that this is just kind of nice and rectangular, you know. It's not a really complicated shape. And I feel like I could draw that pretty easily. So I picked out 5 things, and then I laid them out in my mind. I'm laying them out for you and saying, this is easy for me. This is real hard for me. I want to choose something kind of here in the middle. And for us today, I'm going to go with a Roku remote. I feel like that looks like a nice little challenge without being too overwhelming. If this looks too hard for you, then go for something easier. Am I saying to you that you need to choose between a butter knife, a Roku remote, a tiny thing of toothpaste, a stapler, and a whisk? No. You're going to pick the things that make sense in the home that you're living in. So for some of you, that might be choosing your cell phone as the thing that you want to do. You might even draw and dimension the pencil that's in your hand. You know, you've got a lot of choices. So I just want to point out that sometimes the first thing we grab isn't the best choice for an activity like this, and that you want to be mindful about what you select. So let me clear off the things I'm not going to do. And let's think about drawing this remote. This is what we're not doing. We're not laying that remote down and then just tracing it. No. When we do a thumbnail sketch as an engineer, what we're trying to do is hold this shape in our mind to see 3 dimensions of it. It's called like when you get in design and modeling, you're going to learn how to make isometric drawings that are very specific and much more precise than what I'm asking you to do today. Today, we're just drawing a thumbnail drawing of this. So I want to hold this in my head so that I can see the 3 sides of it. So I'm going to kind of hold it to an angle at the camera, the way that I'm holding it in my mind. And I want to be able to kind of see that top plane. I want to be able to see this front plane and this side plane. I might even want to be able to see that little tab off the back. This might be what I want to do. So I'm going to hold this in my mind here, kind of like this. And then on my paper, I just am trying to get a thumbnail shape of that image. Now for me, I think going in pencil, not pen, a pencil, with a nice light line is the best way to go initially. So I'm thinking here, and I'm getting that shape. Maybe it's a little more rounded than I'm making it. That's why I have an eraser. I can come in and fix that later. I see this little ridge, and I'm noticing like where that line disappears for me and starting to capture it. From the angle I have then, this is kind of coming down to make that front piece. And then what we'll learn is that we're going to really be drawing things like at an angle. Now again, I'm not using a ruler yet. I'm just kind of getting, like that top is the top of my remote. Can you see that? And then the side is going to be the side. So I'm going to come on around down here and kind of fill in these pieces a little bit. Now, there's a reason I picked this remote. I had another one. Where'd I put it? I had another remote and it had like, oh, it's in the other room. I won't go get it. It had like 80 buttons on the top. And I want to draw those 80 buttons. So I picked this remote because it doesn't have as many buttons. But I want to get the detail of my object on my paper, right? So I'm thinking about that power button because those have height. They have depth. They're not just pictures on here. Like I can measure that depth, right? That's some information there. There's a little home button. This does not have to be to scale. You don't need to like get out a remote ruler and figure out exactly how far apart these are and scale it perfectly. We're not doing a scaled drawing. We're doing a thumbnail drawing. There's a difference. There's my little OK button. There's a couple down here, like a little 1, 2, 3. That play button in the middle, fast forward, rewind. Oh, then I have like a Netflix button, a Sling button, a Hulu button, an HBO Now button. Talk about product placement. And then there's like an A and a B. I also see that little Roku tab coming off the end there. I kind of want to have that just in dimensions. And then I'm looking over here. There's a bit of a line that I want to capture. This little thumbnail should take a minute. I'm noticing that line is kind of coming up between these two buttons, so I want mine to do the same. If you're finished with it in minutes, you probably didn't have as much detail as I'm looking for. So this is just the rough beginning. Yeah, that's the rough beginning. I know that's light for you to see, but let me show you what my next step is. Once I kind of have this going, and you can see it's not to scale. Like my drawing is smaller than my object. My drawing is a little bit fatter than my object. You see how this is like a slender remote. I've kind of got a little chubby remote. It doesn't have to be to scale. It's okay. But now that I have these guidelines, I'm going to start to flesh out my drawing in a little more detail. I'll try to avoid shadows, and I'm trying to autofocus a little bit better. I want to hide that little guy. Okay, that's a little bit better. And I'm going to make this stronger. When I draw, I have to move my paper because my hand wants to be here and not like this. So I'm always winding my paper around. So now I'm going to go over my guidelines. Try to smooth them out a little bit. Thumbnail sketches are important in engineering because it's how we communicate our ideas. So for now, we're in a measurement unit and we're just focused really on measurement, but we've got to draw and measure an object in our house. But soon you're going to be making your own designs. And so when you're making something brand new and you're sharing that idea with somebody for the very first time, pictures are the best way to communicate what that's going to look like and be. So engineers, some of them use computer programs to help with that kind of communication and thinking. I'm not going to worry about the surface of all of these. I might just kind of do some little symbols. Those are the volume buttons there. You know, you're going to need to choose what level of detail you want to bring out. I'll just kind of lay that there so you can see what I'm doing and thinking. But, you know, when you can be precise, be precise. I'm just trying to get a nice, clean thumbnail drawing of our object. I see some places that what I drew before isn't as strong, so I'm just trying to make it a little bit stronger. I can see that's kind of wider than it has to be, but I think it's okay. Haha, I said I think it's okay, and then I drew the okay button. No, I'm not okay with that. Let's be honest. My eraser is my friend. And see, if I had been doing light lines, that would be a lot easier to erase. But this is really what I need to do. I need to kind of go like across, across. Get that nice in the middle. And the trick of it is it's just kind of angled. Okay, I like that better. I'm going to go through and then erase those other lines as best I can. This is why pencils are your friend. Get a couple of these. If you want to speed up this video at this point, because you're like, and here's another trick I'm going to show you. I drew that line too heavy already. This is harder doing in front of a video. Using like parallel lines helps. So like if I see all these buttons are parallel here, then really they should be parallel here. So like if I kind of use this to go through and get the tops and bottoms of my buttons. It's just going to help that. It's going to help it feel uniform instead of just what I was doing earlier. It's going to create that angle that makes it kind of give it perspective. Does that make sense? A lot of this just has to do with how much you've drawn and practiced drawing. But with those little guides, then I can just close up squares to make my buttons. And I think the angles are going to be better. Maybe not perfect. But we're not looking for perfection. Like, I just want you to look at this and be like, oh, that's obviously a remote that Miss Waddell obviously didn't just draw in half a minute. She's obviously putting some detail in it. Oh no, my microphone button. Sorry. Roku should be giving me some product placement money for this work. All right, so this is an acceptable thumbnail sketch. I want you to see that now I'm going to kind of go through lightly, and erase some of those little lines that helped me before. The places that I drew too heavy too quickly, it's harder to erase. So, you know, that was my bad. I don't want you to start over, but I want you to do the best you can do. I also see that like my hand has kind of been real smudgy. So where I can get rid of some of those smudges, I do. And then where I need to kind of go back in and give my lines a little more life, I do. Okay. So step 1, make your thumbnail drawing. Step 1, make your thumbnail drawing. This is my thumbnail of my Roku remote. And then I'm going to stop this video here and I'll post a new video on dimensioning this. See you in a minute. I think. Figuring out how to stop the video. Hoping that I made the video. That's not what I want. Close.